Welcome back to Mystery Disappearance. So far we've looked into the theories of the surrounding lakes, friends at a card party, and ex-girlfriend Katie and best friend Nick. Today we focus on theories concerning the university itself, St. John's University, an institution of learning and building your future for a price. A university campus would never be guilty of harm coming to one of their students, right? Well, there's a lot to unpack here, so let's take a look. First, a little history of the place. St. John's University is an all-boys Roman Catholic liberal arts school in Minnesota. It is located in Collegeville. It is a 10-minute drive from the all-girls St. Benedict University, located in St. Joseph, so they are technically located in two different towns. St. John's University was founded in 1857, so it has a long history. Monks have occupied this place since the very beginning. They serve as spreaders of the Word of God, they serve as life coaches, and of course they serve as teachers and professors. So obviously this long-time institution holds a lot of power and influence in this region. Yet there are a lot of theories about Josh's disappearance that tie into this campus. You might be thinking, how could a campus be responsible for the disappearance of one of its pupils? Well, one of the earlier theories was that Josh might have been struck by a car by one of the driving monks. Since Josh was walking alone after he left the party, he probably had to cross a road or two and possibly walk through a parking lot, and it could have been an unfortunate accident. I believe this theory was first brought forth by a gentleman by the name of Patrick Marker. Mr. Marker stated that monks on the university had had a history with alcohol. He theorized that a monk or monks might have accidentally hit Josh with their car while intoxicated. Then the university made the decision to cover it up, afraid of a scandal. Sounds far-fetched? Well, not when you dig deeper. You see, Mr. Patrick Marker has had history with St. John's. He attended in the early 1980s, and he was victim of a sexual assault by a monk. It took some time, but Mr. Marker eventually investigated his monk through other victims. And he uncovered an iceberg of corruption, conspiracy, sexual misconduct, and hush-hush. Today, Mr. Marker is aware of over 104 credibly accused monks, some dating back as far as the 1970s and 1960s, some who are deceased now. He's aware of hundreds of victims and recounts over 250 names and stories he's heard in over 3 decades. His goal has been to be an advocate for these victims and to expose the names of perpetrators on his website, today known as BehindThePineCurtain.com. So how does this tie to Josh? Well, get this. Patrick Marker started his website in June of 2002. Back then it was called the Abuse Disclosure Project. On October 2nd, 2002, a little over a month before Josh's disappearance, something major occurred. Settlements for cases of sexual abuse on campus came to light. The name and files of several monks were released to the public. This was on the news, this was in newspapers, etc. With the increasing accusations of sexual misconduct over the years, I assume St. John's was forced to address it in some fashion. The campus was essentially taking a hit and tried as best they could to save face and turn it around into a positive message. In that same month of October, Mr. Marker joined the External Review Board. Upon hearing this news, the community was definitely shocked and lots of discussions were being had. This was the talk of the town and campus. One of these outraged people was none other than Joshua Guimond. Over the next few weeks, Josh had voiced his opinions on this matter and was irate that the university would protect these sex-offending monks, sending them to camps after a misconduct only to return 1 or 2 semesters later. Family and friends recall how Josh wanted to write a paper on the subject. Now, there's never been any evidence that Josh was working on such a paper, although internet searches were made on his computer. On October 3rd, 2002, at 8:52 a.m., Josh made a search for St. John's Abbey Statute of Limitations Conspiracy, so it's evident that Josh started searching pretty early after the revelation. On October 22nd, 2002, Josh viewed a Star Tribune story entitled, "St. John Launches Ad Campaign to Counter Image Woes." Interestingly, we learned on the Simply Vanished podcast from Miss Olga Zentino that Josh had talked to her as well about the sex abuse scandal, and that he in fact did visit Mr. Patrick Marker's website. I thought that was an interesting bit of information because this website reveals the names of perpetrators, even some still active on campus or at other employments, according to victim statements. Although back then, this website was very new, so I don't know how much information was on it at that point. But it makes you wonder what information Josh came across. Did the website reveal the names of credibly accused monks still on campus? Did Josh come across information that he shouldn't have? Did Icarus fly too close to the sun? Josh voiced his outrage to friends and family, but to what extent did he voice his outrage to his professors and monks on campus? Now, I want to believe that these monks would have been on their best behavior in the aftermath of this scandal. I want to believe that. But was that the case? The sex abuse scandal was revealed in early October, and Josh disappeared on November 9th. But doesn't that seem a little quick? Let's say some monks were responsible for Josh's disappearance. How did things escalate so quickly to the point they felt that their only option was to make Josh vanish? Did Josh significantly ruffle some feathers in such a short time? I always felt that Josh would have had some major altercation with a monk for things to progress this far. However, family and friends don't state that Josh ever had any confrontations or provided any names, so we don't know exactly what Josh knew. The sex abuse scandal was a talk of the town and campus for several weeks. I mean, there were several victims that the Abbey settled with. Mr. Patrick Marker had been a thorn in the university's side and worked to bring perpetrators' names to light, even creating a website for this purpose. So, why pick on Joshua? Were there monks who seriously felt threatened by this young junior running his mouth a little bit? It is possible. Coming back to the accident theory, if some monks were driving under the influence and hit Josh, it is possible that they got rid of all the evidence because the campus wouldn't have been able to handle another scandal a month after the first one. Now, there were plenty of suspicious or credibly accused monks still on campus around the time Josh disappeared. One of the more suspicious monks was Father Bruce Wolmering. Almost a year after Josh's disappearance, a profile of Josh's likely abductor was released by Dr. Aubrey Immelman, a professor at St. John's University who had previously done psychological profilings. He claimed that this profile was created as per an FBI crime classification manual that draws and outlines the type of sex offender that would abduct a student without leaving any evidence. He would be very familiar with the college campus from which the victim disappeared, would know whether the campus had surveillance cameras and where they are located. The offender may previously have come to the attention of authorities as a result of allegations of inappropriate relationships with younger men. The offender likely would have rehearsed his abduction plan. He used a con or ruse for assistance of directions, feigning a fall, accident, or injury to lure a student late at night into a vehicle, to an isolated area concealed from public view, or to an indoor location over which he had great deal of power, example, basement, garage, or office area. He would have an extensive collection of bondage pornography, though this would likely be a close guarded secret. May have changed jobs or left the area until the dust settled enough for him to feel it was safe to return. Apparently, shortly after Josh's disappearance, there was a note on Bruce Wolmering's door stating that he was off for a few days and going to his cabin somewhere. St. John's University recognized this profile as a strong match for Bruce Wolmering, and they did not want this profile to get out to the public. Even Stearns County Sheriff Department tried to stop Dr. Aubrey Immelman from publishing this information. They felt that it could tip off the perpetrator, who would then cover his tracks or hire a lawyer. The profile of Josh's likely abductor was first drafted in 2003, but wasn't made public officially until 2006. Abbot John Clausen, who's been abbot at St. John's University since 2000 and continues to still be abbot at the university to this day, greatly feared a connection would be made between Bruce Wolmering and Joshua Guimond's disappearance. Father Wolmering has quite a long rap sheet, with several victims dating back to the 1960s, and get this, he engaged in sexual misconduct in late 2002 and early 2003, the very school year that Josh disappeared. I guess the monk abuse scandal didn't scare him. After several complaints from the now anxiety-ridden student, Father Bruce Wolmering was forced to resign from his position in spring once the school year ended. Good God, what's going on here? St. John's knew about his history, but they kept protecting him and employing him, and worked hard for his name not to be revealed to the public. Now, there's no evidence that Father Wolmering ever murdered a student or even abducted one. These sex-offending monks are groomers who use time to create trust, and may eventually provide alcohol and drugs to lower their victims' inhibitions to then commit their sexual offenses. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're killers or expert body hiders or evidence hiders, but at the same time, how far would one go to preserve the integrity of their vocation and not tarnish the reputation of the Abbey and University? Was Josh his one and only murder? Father Bruce Woolmering died in 2009 and under very mysterious circumstances. The official police report states that he went into cardiac arrest and fell to the ground and got up several times. He cracked his skull and a rib punctured his lungs, which led to a lot of blood loss. Sounds like a pretty violent self-inflicted trauma. Although nobody else was found at the scene, but some people wondered if one of Bruce's former victims could have come back to retaliate. Even more suspicious, when Father Woolmering died, police taped off his bedroom like a crime scene. They took his computer. I suspect they knew he had either some form of pornography or maybe had produced some himself. Some people wonder if there would be information about Joshua Guimond on that computer. Stearns County has never revealed what they found. It makes you wonder to what extent Stearns County protects this campus. If there was evidence on Josh on that computer, would the detectives reveal it and potentially open a can of worms of lawsuits against the university? Or would they find it more beneficial to keep hush about it and not bite the hand that feeds the nearby communities? Let's not forget, law enforcement has a tendency of protecting an institution more than any individual. Institutions would rather protect themselves and their image, even at the cost of one or more individuals. It definitely makes you think. As for Abbot John Clausen, I wish I could enter his mind and see what he knows about all of this. I suspect two possibilities. One, he knows exactly what happened to Josh and has worked hard to stay silent and get the attention of media and law enforcement away from the campus. Or two, it is possible he has no idea what happened to Josh, but still, he tries to make sure the trail of the investigation doesn't lead back to the campus or to any of his monks. Mr. Patrick Marker eventually resigned from his position as member of the External Review Board. He had a conflict of interest. The campus didn't want to make Bruce Woolmering's name or crimes public, much to the disapproval of Mr. Marker, who considered Woolmering to be one of the more dangerous monks. The campus seems to pick and choose the names of offenders they release to the public, in a very calculated way that minimizes damage to their image. There's a lot of damage control going on here. It is also worth mentioning that at least two credibly accused monks lived in the dorms alongside the students. Josh's dorm was St. Mars House, and a monk by the name of Jerome Tupa lived in or around there. Jerome Tupa was into artwork, but some thought that this interest crossed the line into pornography, most likely underage. He's had some questionable conducts as well with at least two students. At Metencourt, where the card party was, a monk by the name of Tom Endert lived there. Father Endert had at least two victims who were both 14 years old at the time of their abuse. One of the boys committed suicide years later. Patrick Marker doesn't believe these monks were ever questioned by police or even looked at after Josh's disappearance. I wonder how they could have planned to abduct Josh though. Josh went with some friends to Metencourt, but he suddenly left by himself. Nobody knew Josh would be walking outside alone at a specific time. Even if one of the monks was tailing Josh, it didn't give them a lot of time to intercept him, unless it was by pure coincidence as they passed by. So, it makes you wonder if something had been pre-planned with Josh somehow. But anyway. And there were other monks with histories who were active on campus during the year of Josh's disappearance. Father Robert Koopman apparently had a relationship with a student Josh knew well, and Father Finian McDonnell admitted to having more than 200 sexual encounters, some of them being children overseas. Some of these monks held positions in psychology departments or some other counseling capacities. Though there is no evidence that Josh ever sought counseling or ever was a victim of abuse, though the possibility is there, Josh was possibly questioning his sexuality. And we'll touch on that more in the next episode. But even 20 plus years later, St. John's University has done very little to advance the investigation on its missing student. With years and decades of sexual abuse coming to light, they might have found it more advantageous to phase out any mention of Joshua Guimond. As far as we know, no other students have ever disappeared from this campus or got killed on campus. There are a lot of monks with sexual histories, but no evidence of murders or attempted murders. This campus, though, seems to be good at hiding things and sweeping facts under the rug, but as far as we know, nothing like this has happened before or since. So, once you start peeling the layers of this campus, you find a long history of deceit, lies, manipulations, and sexual abuse. It's unnerving, it's disturbing, it's unsettling, but at the end of the day, there is no evidence to connect any of the monks to Josh, as suspicious as they look. Stearns County seems to be very happy to investigate any leads that are not connected to the university. They don't seem to want to tackle that dragon. Even the episode of Unsolved Mysteries barely touched on the monk's abuse scandal. They spent more time on an orange Pontiac Sunfire. So, were some monks responsible for Josh's disappearance? Could it have been a mere car accident and the university decided to erase all trace of it for fear of a second scandal that would probably have spelled the end for this campus? Or did some monks overreact and decided to make Josh disappear over a paper that he most likely didn't start writing yet? On the Unsolved Mysteries episode, Josh's mom Lisa stated that Josh was smarter than he should have been. That worries me a bit because it makes me wonder what Josh knew. What if Josh had been the victim of some form of sexual misconduct at some point? That definitely would have raised the stakes. It definitely would have been ballsy of the monks to orchestrate this disappearance so soon after the publicized monks abuse scandal. But at the same time, if the monks are responsible, then they've succeeded. Josh vanished without a trace, there is no evidence leading back to the campus, and the case remains in limbo ever since. Even though theories concerning this campus are some of the more believed theories as to what happened to Josh, there is another theory that rivals the theory of the monks, if not surpasses it.